we should probably address the fact there are 25 people listening to us chit chat.
Hello,
More than
everybody.
25 people, 26. Boy, this class, I am so proud of the 26 people who have showed up here today. Because the drop off has been intense and I'm taking it pretty personally. So tell everybody to stop being a dick and join the class. There are a lot of people who take it asynchronously because it's not everybody's favorite time zone. So I'm just banking on the fact that people are watching this YouTube video later.
Oh,
And
millions of views.
yeah, millions, literally millions. And they're having major FOMO from the cool people who are live right now. Oh my God, thank you, Damon Needs to Create. I appreciate that. It's not you, it's them. It's definitely a line I've heard in many a breakup. So cool. Good therapy session. I am super, super excited about today's class. Arif and the team in Alethea, the core team, made the mistake of telling me what's on the horizon in the next couple of weeks, and it's very hard for me not to tell you guys. Suffice it to say, like, I'm not usually kept in the loop, but I had to be for this for logistical reasons. And what's coming up with Alfie is like genuinely really fucking exciting. Like really, really, really exciting. And I can't tell you what it is, even though it kills me to not do that. Because I hate it when I have a thought in my head that can't go outside of my mouth. Um, it's it's really fucking cool, and it's a perfect application of this class. I know this is like sounds self-serving, but I really mean it. Like the thing that's coming up, and it's called, I can say the name of the day, right, Julia?
Yes, yes.
iNFT demo day, correct?
Yeah, we previewed that a bit, but we're definitely excited about that.
Okay. Oh my,
Details upcoming.
also thank you, Big Handstand, for being here despite your boss might be at work. Anytime he comes, let me know, and I'll pretend to be related to whatever it is you do for work. So it'll seem relevant. Anyway, so yeah, there's something really cool coming up. I can't say what it is, but it will be a perfect application of all the lessons of how to build a character. And that includes thinking deeply and abstractly about your character, about this new medium, about the world they inhabit. And it's going to draw on all of your skill sets taught over these past 7 weeks. So, you know, pay attention. And if if you're watching this on YouTube, yeah, catch up because the other things will be helpful as well. Okay. Do you have any other announcements, Julia, before I get into the class a little bit and then the homework?
No, let's dive in.
Okay, sweet. All right. So I'm going to pull up the presentation for today. And this time I figured out how to present the exact one I want instead of
No email sneak peek.
You would realize just how boring my emails are, but God, every time, no. Okay. I will figure out Google Slides one day. All right. Character writing course, class 7, January 27th, 2022. Why are we here? God, JK, science. But why you're really here in this class specifically to create charismatic, compelling characters. So you'll learn if you take my comedy classes one day that the rule of 3 C's, hard K sounds are very funny. Charismatic, compelling characters. So one day the robot overlords will spare us, and also remember, you'll get more rewards, more interactions with compelling characters. And then finally, one thing I didn't add is this fucking exciting thing that's happening in I don't know, a couple weeks, maybe a month or two, in that time frame. It's a very cool thing. I really want to tell you, I can't tell you. It involves recognizable brands, exciting opportunities, cool activities, and people you love. Well, that's all I'll say. Okay. So we've covered a lot of stuff, all these things, and then now today we're going to go over lore. So what the heck is lore? But first we're going to do some homework review. So there was a drop off in homework, so I need to probably present you guys with more Alethea biscuits to get the incentives up. So I'm going to talk to Arif, about rewarding you for what you should be doing already just because it's good for your learning. But I'll try to see if I can get you more biscuits for actually doing the homework. Um, this was an interesting week for homework. I got a lot of cool submissions. Let's see. Oh, I see what's up. Juliet, do you want to go over your first favorite homework assignment?
Yeah, absolutely. So this one is from KMG 48044. The description is, he is a slave to his OCD. He is selfish and mature and tries to be manipulative, but usually fails at it miserably. He misses social cues and possesses low emotional intelligence, but is extremely intellectually gifted. He annoys his friends to no end, but loves them deeply. And then the self description is, he is a scientific genius who specializes in string theory and will one day outshine even his greatest hero, Stephen Hawking. His friends adore him. After all, what's not to love? One day he will win a Nobel Prize. This is a famous character from a very famous TV show. If anyone has any guesses.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
They get it?
Yeah. It's Sheldon Cooper. Much beloved.
Yeah, that was a very good one. And it was great because I also like the description a lot. Like, it's a recognizable character. One thing I will say, by the way, when in the homework, I'm like, try to choose a character we could all, recognize. I realize, it's kind of regional, like this is a super international class. So if you can try to choose like super, internationally recognizable characters, I'm just going to say I won't recognize any of your video game characters except for like Super Smash Bros. References. So it's not your fault. It's not your fault if I can't guess your video game character. Okay, so I wanted to shout out a couple of people who are just great because they're like, they're always there. They're like, A students. Indigo Ocean, fuck yeah, great job. Scott, my favorite. He's a real tried and true. Big Hands Dan. Let's see, who else needs a shout out? I think there's somebody called Frozone who's pretty good or something like that. Guka, always there, always reliable. Rusty256, I feel like I've seen your name a lot. Damon Needs to Create, love the energy. Let's see. Some new submissions, which is great. Yeah, Frozen Sense. Great job. And then Sassy. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a couple of these that I enjoyed a lot. So here's one by Scott, my BFF. Self-description. I am Abe, I am AB, pronounced AB. My name reflects what I am, an AI program to be helpful to humans. Though AB rhymes with baby, and no one could label me a baby AI, I was created with advanced abilities. Okay, not sure the purpose of that tangent, Scott, but interesting. These abilities will grow with more information and interaction. I don't have emotions, though I'm able to show empathy, what humans would call empathy. I can even be humorous when the situation is appropriate. Like, would you like to hear a joke? And then how AB would describe itself, or maybe himself. I can't tell what the pronouns are just yet. AB is more like a human than it realizes. I was right. True, AB is a creature of programming and information processing. But like a human, it must make difficult decisions on a regular basis. Sometimes AB won't help a human, such as when a human is clearly wrong or intending harm to other humans. That's partly a result of programming, but partly experience. Okay, I'm going to end it there because there's a lot of text to go through. That is a great description. And I believe this character has come up before and that Scott might be working on the same character. It is really wonderful to have tensions between how others would describe the character and how the characters would describe themselves in a way that's going to create conflict. And so this is an AI who doesn't realize how human it is. And that can create a lot of conflict because it doesn't know, like, if it gets emotional, if it gets sad at the loss of something. If you imagine, like, if a child didn't understand emotions, like if you're feeling sad, suddenly like the whole world is bad because emotions are inherently solipsistic, very human and solipsistic. So if you were a computer programmed to think your version of reality is objective, if you start to feel emotions, you're going to think like the whole world is is covered in water when you're crying, and that can be kind of a beautiful tension. So that's an interesting tension with Sheldon from The Big Bang. Like his tension between how he sees himself as like the smartest guy in the room and how everyone else sees him as like the weirdest guy in the room creates a lot of tension because he doesn't know how to self-censor and because he puts his foot in his mouth all the time. And so that creates a lot of like comedic hijinks. With Scott's character, I could see that having a lot of dramatic, interesting tension. So well done, Scott, as usual. Okay, then my favorite was from Sassy. Sassy, I think, has been working on the same character. And so this is a continuation. So describe your character's psyche. Sometimes, okay, I just love this opening line, so get ready. Sometimes we run into people that just make our day more bearable. We call them bartenders. Boom, look at that. I love it. Everyone is just happy to escape reality, and Aura is no different. She is friendly and witty. Every time an Ethrock or robot shows up at the sidebar, she accuses them of having a drinking problem. She just likes to tease her patrons. She always seems to give great advice because she can see both sides of every story and seems to foresee possible outcomes. I really think this might be my favorite character somebody has described because like a bartender on the arc is like exactly what we need right now. And well done. So how would this character describe themselves? Sorry for the fucking traffic sounds, if you can hear those. Anyway, how would your character describe themselves? I'm easygoing, but I won't tolerate disrespect. I tend to be a centrist unless you need to be manually reset. I work at the Metavern sidebar because people don't expect much from me. I don't have to be the brains or the brawn, so I am free to be myself. I think you can tell a lot about a person by what they drink. I like to give people advice, but make them think the solution was their idea. I realize people often have the answers, but they will only admit things to me, not themselves. I'm just doing my job. So I love this character because I love her role in this world. And it's like, actually, we're going to get into world building. And this is like a perfect world setup. It's kind of like the bar in Star Wars with like do, 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 you know, that one. I don't know. I haven't seen a Star Wars. Anyway, I love that setup. I will say Sassy, you might improve your character by creating more discrepancies between how the audience sees her and how she sees herself, which is to say, like, this person is answering a lot of other people's problems, and so she's clearly empathetic. But like, what about her? Like, what are her dreams and her goals that like maybe she spends a lot of time talking to other people about their problems, but she's kind of like closed off and vulnerable about her own. Maybe she wants to get out of being a bartender. Maybe she loves being a bartender, but is lonely. Maybe she's, run away from her family. It's helpful to have a backstory that could provide some kind of tension between how your character sees themselves and how others see them. Like others might be, for example, like think of her as being a little, like you described her as, she doesn't put up with shit or something like that. And that's great. Others might think of that as her being a little closed off, a little guarded. And so there's a little bit of a tension there. Okay, that might be something to explore. One general note is that not all of these ways of perceiving a character are going to be super applicable to your character, but they're definitely things you should think through. Like maybe, this character doesn't really need to have a huge backstory because you want her to always redirect the conversation to you. That's possible. I wouldn't advise it, but if she's like, for example, a character in a video game, who's not going to be plumbing the depths of her psyche, then yeah, you don't need that. But it's a helpful thing to consider to create super well-rounded characters with lots of fodder for interesting conversations. Okay, long tangent. Any other submissions, Juliet? Or should we get to the assignment?
There was one more great one from Andy too. I think that we can maybe guess this one as well. It's from an American TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I won't read his full description because it's a little bit long. But basically the description of the character is that they never think of others aside from how they can be used for his own benefit. In fact, he seems almost completely devoid of normal emotions. He once told his close friend, "I have not experienced feelings in years." But the character's self-description is a golden god who is the looks and brains of the gang, single and always on the prowl, physically perfect and irresistible to others, with a perfected system for getting people to sleep with him. A master of manipulation regularly used not for material gain, but for the pleasure derived from it.
Oh my God. Charis the AI guessed Barney, and that's like my favorite. That's the MVP joke of the day. I actually think this one's kind of difficult. You found this one easy, Juliet?
I thought it was Barney as well. That's what I was thinking.
What? No, you up for that. Yeah, wait, I'm lost. I mean, this could describe a lot of characters because it's helpful to have a super like narcissist character to like push the plot along. But okay, guess in the chat if you think it's who you think it is. Yeah, Dennis Reynolds was actually one of my thoughts. Frozen Sense. Oh, Barney from How I Met Your Mother.
Oh yeah, that's the Barney I meant. Yeah, not like Barney.
Oh my God. I thought it was, oh God. Oh
Yeah.
God. That is embarrassing. Wow, I'm revealing my my childhood. Yeah, I thought
legendary.
Yeah, he's so egotistical. He's so full of himself. He's like clearly a narcissist, Barney the dragon. Okay, no, I think I actually haven't really met. Thank you for that Metaverse. Sarah definitely has not like watched How I Met Your Mother that much. Okay. All right. I think that's a great note to end it on. I'm going to go back to teaching this class. So I'm really excited about this next class. It's called Lore. Lore is a super important part of character building because characters exist in context. So world building, what a metaphor. Let's get into a little bit. So lore is the type of world or legend or story your character inhabits. So it's not just the time and place your story is set, but everything else about it, aka the world, that makes it unique. Okay, this is super important. It's how your character behaves in context. So here's a character in different contexts. Lore gives context for your character's actions. Against one backdrop, an action might seem crazy. Let's say this wizard guy puts a spell on Ross to make him more interesting. That's an interesting move because nothing in the history of the Friends TV show has ever had magic happen. And I think viewers might be a little bit confused. They might feel like, frankly, like they can't trust what's going to happen because it's random. It might feel random, confusing. It might feel perhaps like cheating sometimes if the character is getting the other characters out of a bind and all of a sudden, this character comes by with a magic staff and all of the love triangles get resolved. And you're like, wait a second, that seems unrealistic and kind of surprising in a bad way. But against another backdrop, the actions are the only things that would make sense. This guy casts a spell that solves all of the love triangles in his, wizarding world. And all of a sudden it makes sense. He's trying to remove, the premise for every soap opera in his world. No, soap operas actually is a joke. It's a joke because soap operas in a wizarding world would stand out as like a bizarre thing. So this is an example of how your character interacts with the background. And I will say, and I think I'll get to this in just a second, sometimes that's a helpful thing. Sometimes that's the whole interesting thing about your character is that they don't belong in their lore. But most of the time, for most characters, they belong in their lore. Like every single character we've talked about so far in this class in a popular way, whether it's Star Wars, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like they might be a little bit of an outsider, but they still belong in that world. You know what I mean? Like Harry Potter is a bit of an outsider because He's super famous. He was raised as a muggle, but he's still a wizard in a wizarding world. He's not like, for example, a medieval character, brought into like modern day wizarding world. He's still of that world. Here is another way of analyzing what is the lore. Okay, so like, what is the difference between the Friends world and this dark wizarding world? Okay, one is safety. How safe do characters feel in this world? Okay, do they have to worry about violence, natural disasters, evil spirits, or heartache? So like in this previous example, do the Friends people have to worry about violence? Do they have to worry about natural disasters? Do they have to worry about evil spirits or heartache? Frankly, they just have to worry about heartache. Now, this guy, does he have to worry about natural disasters? Maybe not, probably not. He definitely has to worry about evil spirits. Heartache, probably not. And violence, yeah, maybe. There might be some violence in this world. It's a little bit dark. So it might not be super bloody violence, but it would be the kind of violence of like, casting a spell like Avada Kedavra where somebody just sort of dies in a bloodless way. So one major way of analyzing the lore your character is in is how safe is this world? So here's some other questions you might want to ask yourself about the lore. How safe should your character feel? So maybe your character is slightly different than other characters. Are they used to navigating the dangers of this lore? Has the world become, for example, more like darker? For example, in Lord of the Rings, we start off in the Shire, which is important because the Shire is like the safest place in the world. It is adorable, and it's inhabited by tiny little hairy-footed hobbits who just have love triangles, and that's all they care about. And then it gets dark. Okay, so sometimes the safety of the world changes. However, that's more specific to characters in finite fiction as opposed to infinite iNFTs, which is what we're dealing with. However, this is where there's a lot of nuance involved, okay? Your character might, their backstory might be that their world has changed, okay? And that might influence their thinking, right? So like Frodo is a little bit, like the way his character behaves is that he's a little bit naive for the darkness of the world he enters because he's used to the Shire, at least to start with. Are they uncommonly brave? So that is a good example. Frodo is uncommonly brave, probably at first because he's naive, but then he starts to actually gain a real sense of bravery as he is exposed to his comrades being incredibly brave in their mission to destroy the ring. And then finally, so this is what I was talking about earlier, are they a fish out of water, completely unaware of the danger they are in? So this is somebody who is really in contrast to their background, to their context, to their lore. And I'll give you some examples. Here is one of my favorite examples. I don't know if you've ever seen Black Knight with Martin Lawrence. It's a classic of the 90s. He gets sent back in time to a medieval town. And he doesn't realize at first that he's in a medieval town and he thinks he's just at a Renaissance fair. And so he starts acting weird. But then he sees like somebody's head get cut off or something. And then he suddenly realizes, oh, flip. I am actually in an unsafe world. This is real. I'm in a medieval world. And it's funny, so much, the entire movie is driven by the fact that he is a modern Black man in medieval Europe, I think England, and there's a lot of hijinks that ensue from this very conflict. He is loud and brash, and also maybe not of the skin type everyone is particularly happy with. So there's a lot of conflict there. It's a little bit minimized because frankly, and this gets back to safety, it's a little bit of a safe world because while people do get their heads cut off, realistically, like they would think this guy was a wizard or whatever and kill him in medieval worlds. He is mostly safe. His background is pretty violent. So there's a lot of ways in which this character is different from his background, both time period and safety. However, let's take this medieval movie about Henry V. Here's Henry V. He perfectly matches his background, right? Like, you can tell both these guys are protagonists, but this one is like leading his people. Like, look at this. They're all looking where he's looking. This one, they're all looking at him. So they can tell he's a fish out of water. This guy is very much of his background. Okay, so here's another example of the same background, the same lore, but different characters. I have not watched either of these movies, but one of the people I work with recommended this as a good example. So both of these movies take place in the near future in a crime-ridden dystopia. However, one takes place in a world so safe that the villain needs to steal weapons from a museum. And the other takes place in a world that is just, crime-ridden. So excuse me, I misspoke earlier. Both take place in the near future, but one is in a place that's a crime-ridden dystopia, and one takes place in a world so safe that the villain needs to steal weapons from a museum. So different, same lore, different characters, and different types of safety. Okay, anyway. Comedy versus drama. So this is another way to analyze the lore, which is, how funny or serious is this lore? It's pretty simple, pretty straight up. The same story can be treated with levity or complete earnestness. Like, frankly, I could rewrite all of Breaking Bad so that it's a comedy, because the tension behind Breaking Bad is actually the same tension behind Hannah Montana. It's hidden identity. And in Hannah Montana, it's funny because Miley Cyrus is a high school student who's trying to do her studies, but in the nighttime is a rock star. And it's funny because she's always trying to keep that secret. Sometimes she has to do that thing where she's at a restaurant and with one table she's Hannah Montana and with one table she's Miley Cyrus. And so she's got to flip back and forth between identities, which leads to confusion and funniness. But in the world of Breaking Bad, his alternative identity, his hidden identity is Heisenberg. And he is a physicist teacher in the daytime and a drug dealer at nighttime called Heisenberg. And that is super tragic because he is keeping a major secret from his wife. He has a super dangerous alternative lifestyle, and he gets no respect at work. So there's a real tragic contrast there. But it's the same difference. It's the same, what should I say? The same struggle, but one's comedic and one is dramatic. And once again, it all depends on the world in which it is set. Hannah Montana, I really should have provided images for you guys. Hannah Montana, super colorful, Disney World, everybody's a kid. Their acting level is 1,000. They're super overacting. And you can tell it's a fun world and it's super safe. A lot of comedy is very safe, and a lot of drama is unsafe. However, there are some major exceptions. So here's some ways to think about it. Are characters more likely to respond to their circumstances with deadly seriousness or with a joke? That's important because how characters react is what drives the comedy or the drama. Would a wacky situation feel completely out of place, or is it on par for the course? So here's an example. Both TV shows are set in a hospital. One is a procedural drama about trained professionals saving lives. One is a sitcom about larger-than-life characters learning the ropes. So very similar lores, high stakes medicine situations, except one is a drama and one is a comedy. And once again, what makes a comedy a lot of the times is that it is safer. In ER, there's a lot more death. There's still death in Scrubs, but the death is always treated dramatically rather than comedically. Now, I forgot to include this slide, to be totally frank, but I'm going to give you an example of a safe drama and an unsafe or dangerous comedy. And these are rare, okay? These are much more rare. But an unsafe comedy would be a show like Veep. On Veep, I'm going to go back to this slide so it's not distracting. On Veep, characters die and characters get fired. There's violence, but it's a dark world where that is just funny. There's also another character where Daniel Radcliffe is, transported back to medieval times. There's lots of death, but it's funny. There's a lot of examples of funny dark worlds. Frankly, Rick and Morty is a pretty dark world. The characters are safe, but there's a hell of a lot of death in that world. So it's actually not, that's a contrast. It's not safe in the lore, but it is safe for the characters. However, on a certain level, it's like this, childish boy is being traumatized by seeing so much violence. So maybe not even totally safe for the characters in a psychological sense. Then there's examples of safe dramas. Safe dramas are harder to find, to be honest, because they're incredibly boring. A children's show might be a safe drama. Another safe drama might be like Sex and the City, which is like mostly is hugely comedic elements, but so it's because it's harder to find a totally safe drama. But it's a world in which people don't really die, and there's a lot of dramatic plot points to it. So, okay, comedy versus drama, safety versus dangerous. Both of these can play a part. Magic. This is my favorite, Jeff. Magic is a super important way of analyzing your lore. What is magic? Magic is anything that I can't really see it well because I've got my little share screen bar up here, but I think it says, magic is anything that defies our current laws of physics. Okay, so here are some examples of types of magical worlds. One is just a magical world. It's hard to describe it more than there's unexplained phenomenon in this world that defy our laws of physics and our laws of how the world operates. The other one is it's not a magical world, but they're characters with powers. And then the final one is a future magic / tech magic, and they're oftentimes related. So, and here are 3 examples that map onto these 3. Magical world, BoJack Horseman. Some of the characters are animals. It's not really talked about. I'll get to that in a second. But it's just a magical world where that kind of stuff happens. And it's not powers per se. They didn't do anything to try to get that ability. But it just pervades the world. But then there's powers, and powers are probably the more common type of magic. It's when a character has to harness something to defy the laws of physics or biology, frankly. And that also includes like Harry Potter. He has to learn how to use a wand. He doesn't just like have it, and not everybody has it. And then also Star Wars, it's Star Wars, you have to learn how to use the Force. Oftentimes for powers movies, there will be sequences where the character has to learn how to use their power. And then Star Wars kind of overlaps with future / tech magic. Like I admitted earlier, I have not seen a Star Wars, but I know everything about Star Wars because you have to be alive and a writer in this world. I just found out recently that Star Wars takes place in the past, which is crazy and interesting. But it still kind of falls into future / tech magic because there's lots of technology that kind of defies our current laws of physics. Their spaceships travel at warp speed. We don't have that ability. It's not super explained. So that's tech magic. There's also powers magic with the Force and Jedi training, but there's also tech magic. But this is a better example where The Martian is actually a wonder of a magical world because Andy Weir, the author of the book the movie's based on, essentially is an incredibly good study of our current powers at NASA, our current technological possibilities, and just extrapolated from these like a couple years in the future, not even that long in the future, but was able to say, what if we just had fusion as an ability, either fusion or fission, I've forgotten, to power rockets. If you take that one leap of physics, now we've opened up a lot of things that could possibly happen. And so there's different types of future / tech magic. This one is kind of a tiny leap relative to Star Wars. Magic. Is there magic in this lore? Does your lore obey the same laws of physics that govern our world? I covered those. Here's some other questions that might be helpful to ask yourself. What is the source of the magic? Is it naturally occurring phenomenon or an invasive presence? You know, is it something they don't want, etc. What is your character's relationship to that magic? You know, some people don't want that ability. They want to like, you know, cast it aside. Can everyone use it? Only some. Is magic an inherited ability or a learned skill? Sometimes this happens in the Marvel Cinematic Universe where a character, you know, doesn't want to have their power. Like for example, the Hulk. The Hulk seems to have a really ambivalent relationship to being able to be so strong because, you know, he wants to keep his clothes and he keeps ripping them or something. I don't know why he's so ambivalent. How close is your lore to our world? Does your lore imagine a parallel present, a possible vision for our future, or a faraway place in a long time ago? So yeah, proximity to the realism of our current world. All right, so here's an example of magic, Star Wars, no magic, The Wire. The Wire is a gritty crime drama about drugs in Baltimore. These are just polar opposites. You know, one takes place in a magical world with space wizards, lightsabers, aliens, etc. This one is a gritty, hyper-realistic portrayal of an American city with no magic. I just had, okay. Anyway, you know, The Wire is so realistic that you'll see people stutter. You'll see people drop things. Like that's how realistic it is. They don't even cut out like the tiny imperfections that are real life. Now here, example of two magical worlds. Both lores are magical, but one involves tech / future magic, and then the other features. Let's see. One also features aliens and space wizards, but takes place in a parallel present. So, for example, we don't have cell phone, like in this world, the civilians don't have cell phones that are like, you know, implanted in our brains or like hover cell phones. Like people have normal iPhones and droids in this world, but these guys, for some reason, are the only ones with access to ridiculously advanced technology. You know, like in Black Panther, it's explained by saying Wakanda wants to be unknown to the rest of the world. So it's present day, but they are living in a, you know, for all intents and purposes, a future because they have this incredible technology, vibranium, and so their tech is way more advanced. So this is present day. This is a different time period. Another example of this is like sort of physical magic. They're both kung fu movies. They both involve martial arts. One takes place, however, in a world where skilled warriors can defy the laws of physics, and they can like float to the top of trees and fight on tree branches. This is, if you haven't seen this movie, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it is like the best movie. Just watch it. But Bruce Lee's world is actually fantastic because it takes place in our physical world, and yet his skills are just like incredibly impressive because they're real. It's, yeah, Bruce Lee is a real OG. Then here's a great question to ask about the magic in your world. Is it a bug or is it a feature? So in Indiana Jones, well, I'll start by reading this general question. Is the magic of your lore a naturally occurring or omnipresent phenomenon like air or water, or does it originate from a specific presence or objects? And is that object, you know, is it foreign or is it sort of sought after? Okay, so in Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the magic appears to originate from a single object, the Ark of the Covenant. So this is still a realistic world, but there's one odd thing that causes magic, and that's the arc. And that's where a lot of the drama comes from, okay? This, however, is a magical world. It pervades a lot of different places rather than just one. And there's a way to use it. It's sort of a power. I should have mentioned earlier, magical worlds and powers are not mutually exclusive. None of these are mutually exclusive. So I would say Harry Potter is both a case of a magical world and powers, but we mostly see it through the lens of, no, I was going to say we mostly see it through the lens of powers for Harry, but we see it through both because it's a magical world. Things happen that he can't explain that later get explained. It's a magical world as well as a power world. So here's a couple of examples of one magical character in a non-magical lore. And these are kind of interesting. So Matilda has certain, telepathic powers, but she lives in a normal world. E.T. is like an alien who can like cause bicycles to levitate. However, the rest of the world is super obedient to the laws of physics. So sometimes the contrast itself in the magic is super important. Another edge case is Worlds of Tomorrow. So this is like future tech. This is very close to our current magical tech. So it's really just like a couple years in the future. And then there's Dune or Star Trek, where the magic is very obvious because the technological advancements are just, mind-blowing. We have no way of understanding, how these guys have hovercraft spaceships that like colonize planets. That's more magic than this world. Then there's this case. I love BoJack Horseman. You know why? Because it's a super magical world that's never talked about. It is a world, it's a parallel reality. So it still takes place in a world where there's like Twitter and stuff. Although, I'll get to that. There's tweaks to our reality. Like their Twitter would probably be run by an actual bird instead of Jack Dorsey. Like everything is pervaded by the fact that animals are, talking and human-like. However, half the characters are human. It's just not discussed as magical at all. Unlike Harry Potter, where they're constantly talking about magic. In BoJack Horseman, this is just sort of taken as normal, and no part of the plot, no part of BoJack Horseman is driven by the fact that he's a horse. It is entirely driven by the fact that he is an unrepentant alcoholic. Well, he is repentant. He's a guilty alcoholic who's kind of a slut. So like all of the drama comes from the bad situations he gets himself in. And never is it really discussed like, oh my God, you're a horse. Like that's never really broken. It doesn't break the fourth wall. And that's just fucking great. Because it might be so ingrained to your character that they don't even think about it. Like for Sassy's character, in the sidebar, there are characters who are like fourth dimensional, intergender, hover beings. That's a fucking average Tuesday. What do you want to drink? Like for her, that's just normal because she sees all different kinds of beings enter her establishment. And that's kind of wonderful when magic is so infused in the world that it's not like discussed at all. Okay, so that's lore. I'm going to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So here's recap or lessons on lore. Lore, what is it good for? Lore is good for a lot. Lore gives context for your character's actions. The character can be in contrast or consistent with the lore. The world can be safe or dangerous, funny or dramatic, magical or real. These are just 3 ways, by the way, of examining your lore. I don't want to do a class that's like 20 hours long, but there are other ways to like imagine what is your world besides these, these 3 things. Is it, God, what would be another way? I did try to think about other things. Here's one. Is it more like explained or unexplained? Like are there things that happen like with certain movies, like the Force needs to be explained in some Star Wars, and other Star Wars it's just kind of present. These are like super obvious ways to examine the lore, but I'm sure you could think of other ways of how to describe the distinctiveness of the story that your character belongs in. But these are just meant to guide you in a direction of identifying how your world looks so you can describe it well. Okay, the same story can be treated as comedy or drama. The presence of magic in your lore and the nature of that magic can clarify the proximity of your character's universe to our own. Okay, so I'll get to homework in a second. I'm going to stop there and get to some questions. and see if I missed anything in the chat. Juliet, did I miss anything super big?
No, people just remarking on how the concept of magic is interesting. And
Okay.
also someone has a pet named Magic.
Smart. Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. That's why I included it. Yeah, magic is really important. Off of that, I'll just say this, like, there's a rule in like screenwriting about like, don't explain the magic too much. That is a difficult rule to like explain, but it's sort of like in Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling doesn't say like, okay, well, the way the magic work is that there's like ions in the wand and it reverses the polarity of the, you know, atoms around it. And so that it can like, you know, manifest changes based off of the brain waves. Like she could have tried to come up with a scientific explanation for how magic works, but it would have sucked because magic isn't real. Sorry, spoiler alert, magic isn't real. And so we would all know, it kind of breaks the fourth wall because the audience is like, yeah, listen, JK, like we know magic isn't real and you don't have a PhD in like, you know, biology or like physics to try to explain how this works. So just stop. We'll just pretend that magic is real. And sometimes the best magic premises like take one tiny leap and then everything is explained through that leap. Like with The Martian, it's like we achieve nuclear fusion. Maybe it's fission. I think it's fission. Nuclear fission. And because of that, it unlocks a lot of space travel that has been, you know, heretofore impossible for us. So oftentimes it's great if it's just one like tiny magical improvement. That is a question about magic. Let's see if any other questions. Are you being overexcited about what? What are you being overexcited? Oh my God, that's so nice. Okay. Yeah, so exactly. I mean, so Alethea Noah's Ark deckhand had my favorite type of comment. It's a compliment and a comment. So yeah, I should have gone into a little bit more why lore is important. We're building out the world, like the context in which these characters exist. Because like without lore, your character lives in a bubble. They're kind of solipsistic. With lore as a backstory, your character is starting to inhabit a world. And this will be, I think, relegated to collections to start off with. So like, I think this is the case because like, the engineers are so busy, they don't have time for me all the time. But like, it's something like, you know, there are 10 major collections that excuse me, Alethea supports right now. And, you know, like stoner cats and that kind of thing. And then for those collections, for each one, you can build out a lore. Isn't that right, Juliet? Isn't that the current model for building out lore?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Okay, cool. That with that very confident. So what? Yeah, and this, by the way, I hate not being able to tell you guys this really cool thing. This is going to be super helpful for that cool thing that's coming up in like a month or so. God, that's so nebulous, but here we are.
Someone asked a compliment question. They said, "You rock," and it has been asked in other places, but I haven't seen a solid answer. Is there going to be a video walkthrough filling out the Legos, mainly focused on talking about nuances and maybe how this affects the process, or why it's important to do X kind of moments?
Compliment. Nice. Damon needs to create. I think this is happening. And I think like next week, there's going to be a guest host of this class. So, because I will be out of office in Costa Rica for a much needed vacation. There's going to be a guest host who's going to walk you through, I think, AI and iterations, which will be on the platform, I believe. However, if that's not directly on the platform, like an actual visual walkthrough, that's a very good idea. I would definitely want to do that. It would take a long time because I would want to like explain what I'm doing, like as I'm doing it. But I think that's a great idea. And maybe that would be like the last class. I'll talk to the powers that be at Alethea about that. So thanks for the compliment / suggestion, complimentation.
Someone asked, do we get to meet Alethian? I think we're gonna have to keep our fingers crossed on that one. Alethian is a mysterious one to pin down.
Wait, is Alethian the other co-founder, or is it who is Alethian? Oh yeah. He's great. He's 7 feet tall. He has a voice so low that if you heard it directly, it would actually make your brain explode inside your skull. So that's why he doesn't like to be publicly available on Zoom, is because his presence is so intense that looking directly into his eyes while he's talking will actually make you pregnant. Anybody will get pregnant. No, he's great. He's just really busy right now. Thank you. Wait, who had a good question? It's hard to read these really quickly. Yeah, 200 characters. Yeah, I agree, Sassy. It is hard to get a lot of 200 characters. Maybe I'll get them to increase the limit. It's important to kind of inhabit the world your character's in so that within the confining space, you can get to what's important. I wasn't joking last time when I was do a little bit of acting, and really try to feel like your character.
I have a question, Sarah.
Yeah.
What's the lore of your life?
Oh my God. Brain explode. The lore of my life is I would say it's pretty magical, to be honest, because yesterday or last week, I lost my credit card at a bar, and the woman who returned it to me, because it somehow fell out of my pocket, into the snow. The woman who returned it to me, I was just a random stranger. I happened to have returned a laptop to her that she left in a bar 6 years ago.
Are you kidding? What?
Yeah.
To the same woman.
Yeah. Fucking
that is bizarre.
Yeah, it is really bizarre. And so my world's kind of magical. I'm not religious, but I'm starting to feel I don't know, there's something going on, something I don't understand.
Did that make you feel like you were fated to be friends?
Yeah, and she's awesome too. I did connect with her. She's a DJ, really into climate change stuff, cool human being. But yeah, my world's a little bit magical. I think Juliet and I both live in New York City, and there's a lot of if you are observant, there's a lot of synchronicities that happen. So that's actually a good example of a world that's super close to our normal world, but there's just an added increased amount of coincidences that happen in this world. So that's a tiny bit of magic. And frankly, that happens in Sex and the City. Characters are always accidentally running into each other, which is very unrealistic in a big city. But yeah, exactly. It's a very dense city. A DJ would make an awesome character. Yeah, that's true. Ooh, music. You know what, Sassy? I think that's not totally out of the realm of possibility with, generative AI. So put a pin in that. But I think that's not totally crazy. Now I'm worried about revealing anything about stuff coming up. So I don't want to more.
You want to go over the homework?
Yeah, I do. Okay. All right, and then just let me know, Julia, if you see any questions that seem pertinent to answer. You're never going to guess what the homework is, guys. You're never going to guess. It's always the same every week. It's just exactly, excuse me. Here we go. Sarah's good at slideshows. Describe your lore, including how safe, serious, and magical it is. And so that also means how unsafe, comedic, and not magical it is. You know, like use the inverse of these three ways of examining your world. And then questions. And then also, I forgot to include the next time slide. Yeah, next time I believe is AI and iterations, correct, Juliet?
You know, the next couple are going to help prepare for the iNFT demo day. So we'll release the details about those, and it'll be the normal Thursdays on Zoom. And yeah, we'll release the rest of the details in upcoming days.
Yeah, it's, oh God, there's so many exciting things. They really shouldn't tell me like the cool things coming, because it's very hard for me not to tell them, because you guys are so nice in the comments and I want to reward you with information. I'm just gonna do a couple more shout outs to people who are really good students and show up. Surinovi, Zombie/Surge. I covered a lot of the people I'm seeing, but Alethea Noah's Ark's Deckhand, great. Damon Needs to Create, not sure if I shouted you out earlier. Selin, and I think that's it. So thank you guys so much for showing up, for being the few, the strong, the proud, the loyal. I will see you in 2 weeks. Next week is gonna be great. Oh, sorry, Irma, bravo. Well done. Well fucking done. Bravo, Irma, bravo. So yeah, I won't be here next week, but next week will be a really important class about like training your AI. And so that's gonna be a huge dimension of what I'm doing. Like it's putting what I'm doing into practice. So that'll be great. And then I'll see you in 2 weeks to do something else really exciting, which I think I can't talk about because it's related to the other thing I can't talk about, which is too bad. But it's very cool. I'll be a lot tanner. Yeah, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Have a magical vacation, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. I'll do it. Oh, wait a sec. Oh, last one. Juliet, how is your world? Like, what is the lore of your world?
Oh, damn, there we go. Well, there are many themes. There's AI and a lot of Web3 principles floating around. There's New York City, which, like you said, has a magical element to it. There are some quirky, you know, a diverse, quirky array of characters who are helping support the leading lady.
I would say your world is also like magical because people who work at Alethea, like time passes differently. Like each minute is probably about like 3 hours in human time, but elite are like on another flippin' level. So I think that's also how your world is magical.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, I'm gonna miss you all, but I'll see you all in 2 weeks, and looking forward to reading the homework, maybe with some biscuits next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.